Sitting down here at the 9-Foot Homemade Oak Bar, her first appearance on the EP podcast. I always love when we get somebody new who has been listening to the show for a while, who's been on my wish list to talk to. Carol Kyle is one of your many village trustees. How are you, Carol?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm glad for the invitation to see this beautiful bar you built.
You're somebody that I have seen at so many different events, but because we haven't sat down and had the conversation we're going to have today, I'm always like, I don't know what to say to her. Like, I know your fellow trustees, right? Like Mark Marzullo, he's a talker.
Right. Oh, definitely a talker. Gotta love that Mark, too. Yeah.
Mark likes to talk. Mm-hmm. Okay, Norm's got a couple of jokes.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, he's the best.
Right,
Working with flags.
Yeah, I mean, everybody that has come in and stuff like that, they all have their own personalities. Mm-hmm. I mean, you joined Mark Phelan as a first-time EP podcast guest in 2024.
Oh,
because he hasn't
done it, or he just did it.
Just did it a couple of months ago.
Okay, yeah, I'll be darned.
Yeah, so I mean, so
crazy.
First off, what took so long? Just you weren't sure about me?
No, I wasn't, like you say. One of the time I remember meeting you was when you came over to the food pantry, and this was several years ago.
Yeah,
like maybe around when you were just starting. And you supported us. Number one, I'm thinking, who is this guy? Who's John talking to? I liked you then.
Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yes.
I love what the food pantry does over there. I think that it's, and the way that it's run, and the way that they have, their set of rules, but they're not going to turn anybody away.
No, we don't.
Who needs anything. And
no.
It just feels like there's so many people in the community that are working at it. You get a lot of young kids that come over there and volunteer.
Amazing.
It is really just, you always hear the phrase, it takes a village. The food pantry takes a village, and there are people from all over the village that help it out, and I think that's absolutely wonderful. So there's a lot of things that we could talk about today.
Yeah, there are.
I get people that hit me up all the time because they think that I know everything, and I don't. I'm just the dumb podcast guy. But you probably have some answers for me. So, but before we get into those, a couple basic ones. Where in Evergreen are you? Like, what quadrant are you in?
Well, I currently live and have for the last 47 years the Southwest.
Okay.
I mean Southeast.
Southeast.
I was born and raised in Northeast on 87th and Mozart.
Okay.
Got married. When I got married, we bought our first and only house, our starter home, in the Southeast quadrant. My two children have chosen to stay in Evergreen, thank the Lord, and their homes are in the Southwest quadrant. So I've just about been in every quadrant, not necessarily living, but very active. And then, of course, the sports and everything else, they've been in the Northeast quadrant also, Northwest.
Do you see the differences in the quadrants? Because I always say everything is pretty much the same, but everybody acts like this is my territory. Where do you live? I live over here. Oh. Like, I get that all the time.
It's kind of like parishes.
Yeah.
It's like parishes. I don't know. I think it's South Side. I don't necessarily think that there's difference with the quadrants and people. I'm from this quadrant, you're from this quadrant. I see a lot of community things because there's stuff on both sides. Not only sports, but schools, activities. So, yeah, I don't see the big division, but people do say it. Like they say parishes.
Well, I think what's funny is that there's been a push, I think, in the last 5 years to really unify everything. Now you see events happening over at Sexton Park that we probably didn't have as many of them going on over there. And everything used to always kind of sit on the other side of town. You see that even the summer concert series, it's moving. It's not in one location, which I think is great.
It has moved. But that's because there is more space, like Sexton Park.
Yeah.
The park, of course, Sexton Park, it really is.
Well, I like when it moves around. I think that's
too.
the thing. I mean, you see things over at Yukich, you see things over at Sexton Park, you see things over at Klein Park or Circle Park, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And so I think that's great that it moves around. You became a trustee when? Because I believe you've been a trustee for a little while now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was appointed as a trustee in February of 1988. It was after my father passed away, Robert Norris, who was a trustee.
And that's what Norris Field, that's who Norris Field is named after,
Norris
right?
Field was named after my dad. Jim Sexton was a young trustee at the time, was very fond of my dad, and did his history and looked it up and saw everything that he had done. So as my dad was dying of cancer, my dad knew, thanks to Jim Sexton, that there was going to be a park named after him. That was pretty cool.
That is cool.
It's very cool.
I always find it so interesting that that there are families or there are just lines in Evergreen Park that choose the service of serving Evergreen Park as like part of their almost like their family line or their destiny or whatever it is. I mean, and it's not like it's handpicked for you, right? I mean, you're elected and everything else like that, but it's like you choose to go out there and fix problems and pay attention to what's going on inside of you mentioned the food pantry.
Right.
You're not just a trustee, you're helping out at the food pantry.
Right. I started with the food pantry when I retired from teaching. That's what I did for my career. As far as Norris Field, I mean, I was young and I had 2 little ones, and they asked, I was a precinct captain, and I got a phone call one night and they said, would you be interested? And we would really like a woman trustee.
Yeah.
So this goes to show you, boy, back then, at that time, there was no woman trustee. So.
Are you the first?
No.
No. Okay.
Jean Krupiak was the first.
Okay.
Yes. No, I was the second.
All right. So you get in there.
Oh, I get in there, but it just wasn't a hands down.
No.
I had to do a resume. There were interviews. There were like 15 people that ran for that position, and I was lucky enough. They picked me. Didn't know why I was doing it at the time, but thought, my dad had just passed away, and I was staying home, and I was a teacher, and got involved, and here I am many more years later.
Did you get that from Dad, the idea of being involved in the community and
the
working at those things? Yeah.
I have a brother and a sister that are involved in special needs, and they're administrators at places. Yes, my other brothers are firemen. Yeah. Kitchen table talk.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Kind of gets you going, right? Like I always thought that I would never do anything in law enforcement, and the whole family was law enforcement, and then all of a sudden I was working in a 911 center for 10 years.
Mm-hmm. And you liked it.
Even though I was a radio broadcaster, somehow they got me eventually to go in there and do that job for a little bit. So there's a few things that are kind of going on in town. I'm curious what you think of them. The number one thing, and I don't know if it's number one on the minds of everybody, but it's something that I get contacted about, is the exploration of the new dispensary and the idea of moving that in. I just had a conversation today with Lorraine Swanson from The Patch because she was going over stuff that was going on in Evergreen with me, and we chat from time to time because I do the podcast. Very nice lady. And she brought that up to me, and she goes, what do you think they're going to do with it? And I said, I don't know. I think it's going to end up going in because they're doing a lot of due diligence, and I think that they're answering the questions that a lot of people are posing. What do you think of it? Where is that at?
Well, where it's at is that's one of the reasons. This came when I picked up my mail today. Council moves to approve cannabis dispensary. We have not moved to approve it. We are still looking into it.
What is it? Is that the Courier?
This was the Courier, the current Courier.
Okay, so the Courier is saying that you guys moved to approve it. You're not doing that right
Correct.
now. Correct.
Not right now. No.
Okay.
We're still looking into it. We've got a board meeting. When's the next board meeting? In July. It's kind of been misinterpreted because the question was asked to the people that were representing this dispensary, when do we have to give you an answer? And at that time, they answered us back and said that the state needs to know by such and such a date, which we were not going to meet before that. So what we did is we did an ordinance and have an ordinance ready in case we do vote for it at our next meeting.
Okay. And that's interesting that basically you were told, well, we need to know by this date, and you guys were like, well, we're not going to get pushed into something that we don't want to do yet.
Right. We never do, as you know.
Well, that's something that I've always noticed, and I want to say, I can't remember which trustee said it, so I don't want to attribute it to the wrong person, but I believe it was when Mark Marzullo was down here a couple of years ago, that we're not normally the first people to do something. We'd rather see how does it work in other places and how can we make it better. And that the video gaming machines, I think, is where that conversation came from. Mm-hmm. The idea of, okay, everybody else went and did it, but what we've learned is we probably want to put dividers up. We probably want to separate it from so kids can't see it.
Investigating.
There's different rules that probably should be in place that other municipalities didn't think of because we can go and look at it. Is that similar to how this is working right now at the dispensary? The idea of we want to make sure that we see all the pitfalls, all the pluses, all the minuses, and how to best do it if we move forward?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Because 5 years ago, we wouldn't even have considered and had one of these first meetings. Now we're into our third meeting. So
yeah.
Never say never about anything, especially when you investigate. And one thing I do want to say about this dispensary is that Every resident that was at the meetings, these 2 meetings so far, has been contacted by the mayor individually by a phone call, and all the questions and concerns have been addressed.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're just going to do it or have done it. It's still in the works. We will see.
It's still see what happens.
See what happens.
Okay, we'll see what happens with it. One of the things that I keep seeing popping up that it frustrates me because I know it's been talked about on the show before. So it's like, well, they missed it on the EP podcast, so we'll give it another shot. Are the cameras, the license plate cameras that the police department is using? Now, the way that I remember this being described is that these cameras are set up at different entry points and in certain areas within Evergreen Park. But what they're really searching for is not running everybody's plate to find out does somebody have a suspended license or an expired tag. They're looking to see is a vehicle stolen, because most crimes that are coming out of the city, they're getting a pattern where stolen vehicles are being driven into Evergreen. And that way
in other communities.
Right, and in other communities. And when they see this stolen vehicle, they know, one, car's stolen. That's a crime. That's a real crime. Secondly, it may be up to something. And that's where those cameras are being used the most. Do I have that interpretation correct?
I think it's pretty darn close. I personally don't have the background you even have about.
Well, they've been using these cameras. Like, I remember when I was a dispatcher, like 10 years ago.
Did they call them the word flock? I don't know where that comes from.
No, I don't know if they even call it that.
But that's
the
manufacturer or what?
They're installed on the front of police cars. Like most modern police cars now have these readers. So when the police officer's driving along, he doesn't have to take his hand and punch the plate. So the thing is, they used to drive along and look at a plate and go, huh, and they just punch in the plate. They do it all the time.
Did not know that. Thank
you. They're
okay.
always looking at plates, and they would punch in the thing, or they would come over the radio and be like, county, because I work for Cook County, run this license plate. They give the license plate, and I would run it, and I'd come back, and I'd be like, the plate's good. The person who's attached to it is good. Or I might come back and say, the plate's good. The person who's attached to it's wanted. Do you have somebody that fits this description driving the car? Like, this is the procedure. These are the kind of things that we would do. The police are always doing it. They've been doing that for decades. All the camera seems to do is the work for them so they can keep their hands on the wheel.
Okay.
And it's just scanning as they're driving along, gives them an alert. So I know that those already exist on cars. So when they describe these flock cameras, I kind of got it right away. I was like, it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we're not looking to see who's got an expired license plate or anything. What it is helping the policemen solve cases.
Sounds like it's been effective too.
Very, very. And it's been a stepping stone is probably the wrong word that I'm using, but yes, they've been able to solve things. And they've helped other communities too, and where there's been problems by seeing these license plates.
Right, and I like the fact that the word's out there. I want every criminal in the world to know that they shouldn't drive in Evergreen Park.
Choices and consequences in life, Chris.
Yeah. I want them to know. We should have a big sign on all the streets. You're entering Evergreen Park. Mm-hmm. If you're a bad guy, our camera's going to get you.
Right.
And then maybe they'll make a left.
It's like the ring door, that on your doorbell,
right. Oh gosh, the ring thing. Oh my goodness. So we had an incident in the family. I'm not going to give away the details of it, but I had a kid come back and they were like, yeah, the kids I was with got into some trouble tonight. And I said, yeah. And he goes, yeah, but I don't think anybody recognized me. And I said, every door has a camera, right? Every door. I'm like, please tell me you didn't do anything. He's like, no, I didn't.
I'll catch you. My next door neighbor tells me what time the possums go by at night. I go, thanks a lot, Dan. Technology.
I see a bunch of new businesses coming in. I see new stuff coming in here.
They come before us, Chris, and we pass or we don't pass the business license, but then they don't follow through with sometimes opening the business. So I hate to even mention too many. And the names that, then there's a couple of them that look really good.
I got educated a little bit by the mayor over the weekend of the parade. I was talking to her about it. And
were you in the parade? The first parade that ran that I've all been in for how many years?
Really?
Rained.
Yeah, first one that ever rained, huh?
Yeah,
I was there.
A little drizzle, but it didn't rain like it did on Friday.
It was my first parade I was ever in. I always stand off to the side. Okay. I always stand off to the side, and this one I wanted to be in. I was in this parade, and now I have ideas for next year. Like next year I want to float where I'm pulling a band. Like I want to do something.
Love bands.
Yeah, I want to bring something with me next time on the parade. I already had the wheels turning when I was doing
Good,
it. But
good.
one of the things I was talking to her about, and this is my theory. This is not hers, because we were chatting about this. My theory is that I'm looking at Chicago, which borders us now on three sides.
Yeah,
And-
an island of Chicago.
Yeah, and I'm also looking at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, especially in the service industry. I'm a big fan of breweries. I'm a big fan
she's
of
been
restaurants.
trying?
Oh, I know she has. I know she has. And my thing that I told her is I was like, I don't know, I'd watch out. You might have somebody knock on your door, I would think, because if you look right now, there's been some tax increases, some restrictions put on, some minimum wage changes for waitresses and things like that. And what I'm noticing is the Chicago places have had to raise their prices a lot more. And meanwhile, I'm seeing new businesses move in Blue Island, which is right on the edge of Chicago. Evergreen Park's getting new businesses. Like if somebody's going to open up a place now and they want to be in this area, it
Build
almost
it.
makes more sense to be in a suburban area right outside of the city limits than to deal with what the city has been doing lately with some of their restaurants. And that was my theory
point.
on it. And I would imagine that you guys are seeing, like, you're looking at these new businesses coming in and saying, hey, we may start filling up 95th Street real
Right,
quick.
it'd be nice.
Yeah.
It'd be nice, yeah. Yeah, she's working on it. She's been trying.
She's busy. She's busy.
Busy
What's
lady.
it like? What's it like with her as mayor? I know you had Mayor Sexton for a long time.
And Vacco, I was with Vacco,
and Mayor
too.
Vacco. So, like, I'm sure they all have their own personalities.
Absolutely.
But like,
absolutely.
what's your take on our current mayor right now? Because I feel like she's super involved.
Oh, breath of fresh air. Little things like a fob, so I kept losing my keys to the village hall.
This is what I want on the podcast. I wanted Carol and Kyle Trustee to be like, you know what? Until Kelly Burke got in here, I couldn't get into the village hall.
I kept losing my key, then I had to call Tom in the fire department and go, okay, Carol, I'll stop by with another one. She's a listener the way the other two were too, even Vacco. She's good people.
Yeah.
She's, and I'm not saying it, but she is a woman, different point of view.
Engaging. Seems to know everybody.
Everybody,
Like,
and
at
very
the parade,
positive,
knows everybody.
and doesn't and is calm, very calm, and thinks about things, and then
And has no problem for my crackpot theories. When I sat there and I was like talking to her
No,
about
she
that,
loves
she
them.
sat there and listened and gave me. She's like, well, these are these other factors that are going into it, and I don't know if it'll be as many that would move into Evergreen, but like you could see new businesses might consider. Like we had a whole conversation about it. She didn't just blow it off
Right.
or nod at me. She
Right.
was like, no, let's get into it. Like, and she
likes it.
She was off the
She likes to
clock.
be engaged.
It was
Yep,
after the
yep.
parade. She was relaxing. She had her husband with her, the first gentleman sitting next to her, and like
Yeah,
she was like
the
ready
first
to.
gentleman,
yeah,
yeah.
that's Well, he's in the same men's club as me, so that's what we all call
there
him.
you go.
Yeah.
I know. It's hard being married to women that are involved. My poor husband.
Besides the parade that just happened, what's your favorite event in Evergreen Park? I have to say, besides the parade, because I know everybody's going to say parade. Because that's the thing. Everybody comes out there. We just had the show
It's a
that
big
came
party,
out
yeah,
where
yeah.
everybody I interviewed along the route was like, I don't care if it's raining. This is tradition.
know.
People are out
Yeah.
there. That's their event. But is there
Yeah.
anything else that you really like right now going on?
Oh, I like the newest thing, and that's the picnic in the park with the truck venues.
Yeah.
That's new, and it'll be our third year, I believe, coming up, and it's
It's happening again this year, right?
yes,
Okay.
yes. And again, the Oktoberfest moving it over to Sex. What better venue than over there to have an Oktoberfest?
Yeah.
It's
So that's being moved to Sexton. I didn't realize that yet.
well, didn't they move it last year or the year before?
No, it was at Klein last year.
Was it?
Yeah,
Okay,
I was
thought-
there.
Okay,
I
all
did
right,
a
then I'm
Stein
thinking-
hoisting competition. Every year they ask me to stand up there and make a fool out of myself while they hold the Steins out to see whether or not like they shake. And every year, everybody yells at me because I say that some guy's hand shook.
Okay.
And then his friends are mad at me because I have eliminated him. So last year I got the idea of picking two people out of the crowd to be the judges.
Oh,
So they could be mad at those people instead
not
of me.
you.
Yeah.
They were smart. They were smart.
That's how I do it
I
now.
must be thinking the Halloween. They moved to
Okay.
Halloween over
All right.
there. That's
All right.
what I meant.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. They sit back and think about. They have a lot of meetings. A lot of meetings to discuss all of this thing.
It's a machine that kind of puts all this stuff together, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
not-
a lot of committees. A lot of committees. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the rec department. The rec department is the biggest. That's very involved in it. And then if we didn't have our street department and our public works, we wouldn't be able to do anything. I mean, all those they just mesh and they work together. You know, I'm sure they're having the next meeting for the next parade already. I'm sure the date is already, and it'll be at the Village Hall, and you'll see them coming in with their notebooks, planning next year's.
That's awesome.
Yes,
though.
it is.
That's what I want.
It is.
Yeah, I like that.
That's why you're here.
If I go to a village board meeting, are you a big question asker or are you
I
quiet?
am. I'm one of the,
Yeah?
I'm a Mark Marzullo. Yeah.
Yeah?
Not
You dive in on
as
him?
not as much, but yeah, pretty close. Yeah. I dive in.
That's
yeah.
awesome. Well, if you want to, it's every other week, the village meetings. You can go see Carol in action. And I really appreciate you coming down here and joining me on the podcast. Carol Kyle, one of our trustees, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I finally got to see the bar.
I know.
It's beautiful.
You like it?
I like it.
Okay.
I like it.
Good.
I'm very impressed. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's the EP Podcast. All things Evergreen Park. It's the EP Podcast. Evergreen Park.